The fluorescent lights in the deep space monitoring station buzzed like angry wasps as Captain Jake Morrison stared at the screen that would change everything. His weathered hands, scarred from 20 years of military service, trembled as he read the alien transmission for the third time. The coffee in his NASA mug had gone stone cold hours ago, but he couldn't tear his eyes away from the words that spelled humanity's doom, or maybe their salvation. The translation software had been working overtime, converting the alien language into something his exhausted mind could process. Each word hit like a sledgehammer to his chest. The Zephyrians weren't just watching Earth from their hidden position beyond Neptune. They were studying humanity like scientists study a particularly dangerous virus. "Sir, you need to see this." Lieutenant Sarah Chen's voice cut through the silence like a knife. Her usually composed demeanor had cracked, revealing the raw terror beneath. The communications officer's face was ghostly pale as she handed him another decoded message, her fingers shaking so badly she nearly dropped the tablet. Jake's blood turned to ice water as he read the new transmission. The Zephyrian fleet wasn't just observing Earth. They were conducting what could only be described as a comprehensive threat assessment. And humanity had failed their test so spectacularly that the aliens were genuinely terrified. But here's the thing about fear: it makes you dangerous. "How many ships?" Jake asked, his voice steady, despite the primal fear clawing at his chest like a wild animal. 20 years of combat experience had taught him that panic was a luxury he couldn't afford, not when the stakes were this high. 47 vessels, sir," Sarah replied, her fingers dancing nervously across her tablet as she pulled up the tactical display, all equipped with weapons that make our entire nuclear arsenal look like 4th of July firecrackers. The holographic display materialized above Jake's desk, showing the alien fleet in all its terrifying glory. Each ship was the size of a city, bristling with technology that humanity couldn't even comprehend. But what really made Jake's stomach drop was what came next. "They're calling an emergency session of something called the Galactic Council," Sarah continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, there are 47 different species represented in that fleet. 47 civilizations, all united by one thing: their fear of us. Think about that for a moment. 47 advanced alien civilizations, each with technology that could vaporize Earth in minutes, and they were all afraid of humanity. What does that tell you about who we really are?" The weight of the revelation hit Jake like a physical blow. Humanity wasn't alone in the universe, and they were already being judged by a jury of their cosmic peers. The aliens had been watching, testing, evaluating human behavior for who knows how long, and whatever they'd seen had terrified them enough to call for backup. But Jake had spent his entire career studying human warfare, and he knew something the aliens didn't. Fear was humanity's greatest weapon, not their greatest weakness. "Get me General Patricia Williams on the secure line, Jake," ordered, standing abruptly. His chair rolled backwards, slamming into the wall behind him. "And Sarah, not a word of this to anyone until we know exactly what we're dealing with." The secure communication system crackled to life, connecting him directly to the Pentagon's Crisis Command Center. As he waited for the connection, Jake's mind raced through the implications. The aliens had been studying humanity's military history, their technological development, their social structures. They'd analyzed every war, every conflict, every act of human aggression dating back thousands of years, and they'd reached a conclusion that chilled them to their alien bones through the reinforced windows of the deep space monitoring station. Earth looked peaceful in the distance. The blue marble that had been humanity's home for millions of years seemed so serene, so innocent. But Jake knew that peace was about to be shattered like glass. The aliens had discovered something about humanity that even humans themselves had never fully understood. They'd seen past the veneer of civilization, past the diplomatic speeches and peace treaties, past the charitable organizations and humanitarian efforts. They'd seen the truth that lurked beneath the surface of human society. Humanity had never stopped being predators. They'd just learned to hunt more efficiently. Every human city was designed with military applications in mind. Every communication network could be converted to military coordination. Every technological advancement had potential weapons applications. The aliens had realized that humanity wasn't just another species reaching for the stars. They were apex predators who had learned to cooperate on a planetary scale, and that terrified them more than any weapon ever could. The irony wasn't lost on Jake. For decades, humans had dreamed of first contact with alien civilizations. They'd imagined peaceful exchanges of knowledge, cultural enlightenment, joining a galactic community of advanced species. Instead, they'd been discovered by a universe full of civilizations who saw them as the ultimate threat. But maybe that wasn't such a bad thing as the secure line connected, and General Williams' voice crackled through the speakers. Jake realized that humanity was about to face its greatest test. Not a test of technology or diplomacy, but a test of the very nature that had carried them. From the caves to the stars, the aliens thought they were conducting a threat assessment. What they'd actually done was wake up the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And now they were about to learn why humans had never stopped being the apex predators of their world. The universe was about to discover that there's a difference between being civilized and being tame. Humanity was about to prove that they could be both the most cooperative and the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The question wasn't whether humanity would survive this encounter. The question was whether the rest of the galaxy would survive. Humanity, just like the power of compounding, transforms small investments into massive fortunes over time. Humanity's predatory instincts had been quietly compounding for millennia, growing stronger with each generation, until they'd created something the universe had never seen before. Species that could hunt among the stars. General Patricia Williams had faced down terrorists, dictators, and nuclear threats during her 30-year military career, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The holographic display floating above the Pentagon's Crisis Command Center showed 47 alien vessels, positioned around Earth's solar system like vultures circling a wounded animal. Each ship was the size of Manhattan, bristling with weapons that could turn entire continents to glass parking lots. Her jaw tightened as she processed the tactical nightmare they were facing. This wasn't just first contact. This was an execution hearing. "Tell me again what their communications said," she demanded, her voice cutting through the tension in the room like a sword through silk. The assembled officers around the table represented the finest military minds on Earth, but she could see the fear in their eyes. "Good. Fear kept you alive." Major Tom Bradley, the Defense Intelligence Agency's best xenolinguist, cleared his throat nervously. His hands shook as he pulled up the translated alien communications on his tablet. "They're calling us apex predators, General. They're specifically afraid of what they call our weaponized cooperation and our ability to hunt on an industrial scale." Patricia's laugh was bitter as men hold coffee. "They figured us out faster than we figured out ourselves." Think about that for a moment. These alien civilizations had been studying humanity for who knows how long, and they'd reached a conclusion that most humans had never even considered. We weren't just another species that had learned to use tools. We were predators who had industrialized killing. The room fell silent, except for the electronic hum of computers processing incoming data from monitoring stations around the globe. Colonel Lisa Martinez, head of strategic planning and one of the sharpest tactical minds in the military, pulled up humanity's military history on the main screen. The numbers were staggering. Over 15,000 organized conflicts in the past millennium alone. Wars, battles, skirmishes, guerrilla campaigns, cyber attacks, economic warfare, psychological operations. The data painted a picture that would make any peaceful species run screaming for the nearest exit. "They're not wrong," Lisa said quietly, her voice carrying the weight of uncomfortable truth. "We've never known real peace. Even during our most peaceful periods, we were preparing for the next war. But here's where it gets really interesting. While other species had evolved past their aggressive instincts, humanity had done something unprecedented. They'd perfected them. Look at this," Tom added, highlighting sections of the alien intelligence reports with trembling fingers. "They're specifically terrified that we've maintained our predator instincts while developing collective intelligence. They say we're perfect. Predators who learn to hunt together." The implications hit the room like a physical wave. Every major human achievement had been driven by competition, conflict, or the preparation for war? The internet, originally designed for military communications? GPS? Military navigation system? The space program? Started as a race to build better missiles, Patricia studied the tactical display showing Earth's defense networks. And for the first time in her career, she saw her own planet through alien eyes. Every major city was connected to military command structures. Every satellite could be weaponized within hours. Every civilian technology had potential military applications. The aliens weren't just afraid of human weapons. They were afraid of human ingenuity. They'd realized that humans could turn a toaster into a weapon if they had to. They're afraid. She realized, her voice carrying a new understanding, because we never stopped being dangerous. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity had spent centuries trying to overcome their violent nature, building institutions of peace, signing treaties, establishing international law. But it was that very nature, the predator instinct, that had carried them from the caves to the stars. That might be their salvation. The aliens had expected to find a peaceful species ready to join their galactic community. Instead, they'd found a planet full of predators who had learned to cooperate. 7 billion apex predators with nuclear weapons, cyber warfare capabilities, and the kind of innovative thinking that could turn anything into a weapon. And that was before they got really creative. "General," interrupted Captain Michael Rodriguez from the Space Force, his voice tight with urgency, "we're detecting movement in their fleet. They're forming what looks like a containment formation." Patricia's eyes hardened like steel. She'd seen this pattern before in countless military operations. The aliens weren't positioning themselves for negotiation or peaceful contact. They were preparing for a siege. "They're not here to make friends," she said, her voice carrying the cold certainty of someone who'd spent her life studying warfare. "They're here to decide whether we live or die." The room erupted in controlled chaos as officers began coordinating with military installations around the globe. But Patricia remained focused on the bigger picture. The aliens had made a tactical error that could cost them everything. They'd assumed that because they were technologically superior, they held all the cards. But they'd forgotten the most important rule of warfare: ever corner a predator unless you're absolutely certain you can kill it. And humanity had spent their entire evolutionary history proving that they were very, very hard to kill. The aliens thought they were conducting a threat assessment. What they'd actually done was issue a challenge to the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They'd awakened something that had been dormant for decades: humanity's collective survival instinct. As Patricia watched the alien fleet maneuver into attack positions, she realized that the next few hours would determine whether humanity joined the galactic community as equals or as conquerors. The aliens had given them a choice: submit to judgment or fight. For their freedom, they'd chosen poorly, because if there was one thing that 47 alien civilizations were about to learn, it was that humans had never met a fight they wouldn't take. And just like compound interest, turned small investments into massive fortunes over time. Humanity's predatory instincts had been quietly compounding for millennia, creating something the universe had never seen before: a species that could hunt among the stars. The question wasn't whether humanity would survive this encounter. The question was whether the rest of the galaxy would survive humanity's rise to power. Elder Corthan of the Ethereal Collective had witnessed the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations across the galaxy. But nothing had prepared him for the horror contained in the human intelligence files. His crystalline form trembled as he absorbed data that challenged everything he thought. He knew about the evolution of intelligent life. His species had achieved peace through millions of years of careful evolution, gradually transcending their aggressive instincts until violence became as foreign to them as breathing underwater. They'd assumed this was the natural path for all intelligent species: a progression from barbarism to enlightenment, from warfare to wisdom. The humans had done the exact opposite. They'd perfected barbarism into an art form. "The data is undeniable," reported Captain Veltar from the Zephyrian research vessel, his voice carrying across the vast council chamber like a death knell. Every human settlement is designed for warfare. Their children play combat simulation games from the moment they can hold a controller. Their entertainment media is filled with tactical scenarios that would make our military strategists weep. Here's the truly terrifying part: they'd weaponize their own curiosity. The holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing human cities in cross-section like a surgeon's diagram. What the council members saw made their various forms of blood run cold. Every civilian structure had hidden military infrastructure woven through it like a spider's web. Hospitals that could convert to command centers within hours. Schools that doubled as training facilities for young warriors. Sports stadiums that served as rally points for military coordination. Even their places of worship had been designed with defensive capabilities in mind. They don't just fight, Veltar continued, his voice heavy with the kind of dread that comes from staring into an abyss and realizing it's staring back. They've evolved to fight. Even their recreational activities are combat training disguised as entertainment. Think about that for a moment. While other species developed art, music, philosophy as their primary forms of entertainment, humans had created elaborate simulations of warfare and called them games. Their children grew up strategizing about conquest and called it fun. Council. Prime Zethera, whose species had ruled the galactic core for 10,000 years, studied the tactical assessment with growing alarm. Her tentacles writhed nervously as she processed information that challenged her fundamental understanding of civilization. What about their space capabilities? She asked, hoping to find some limitation, some weakness that could be exploited. Primitive. By our standards, Veltar replied, and for a moment the council felt a collective sigh of relief. But then came the devastating follow-up, but designed with military applications in mind. Every human spacecraft is built to carry offensive capabilities. Every satellite can be converted into a kinetic bombardment platform. The humans hadn't just reached for the stars, they'd militarized the journey. But the most disturbing revelation came from the psychological profiles. The Council had expected to find a species that reacted to threats, that adapted to challenges as they arose. Instead, they discovered something far more dangerous. Humans didn't just adapt to new threats, they anticipated them. They're theoretical. Weapons research included countermeasures for technologies they'd never encountered, defense systems for attacks they'd never experienced, battle plans for enemies they'd never met. They're preparing to fight species they've never met, whispered Science Officer Kethra, her tentacles quivering with fear that resonated through the chamber's bioneural networks. They assume every new discovery is a potential weapon, every new environment a potential battlefield. It was like discovering that your neighbor had been planning for a war with you before you'd even met. Elder Corthan, his compound eyes focused on the data showing human coordination networks, and what he saw there made him question everything his species had achieved. The humans had maintained pack hunter instincts while developing global communication systems that could coordinate attacks across their entire planet in real time. They're not just individual predators, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. They're a collective predator species. 7 billion apex predators with instantaneous communication and a shared tactical database. The silence in the council chamber was deafening. 47 species, each with their own military might, each with advanced technology that could reshape worlds. All united in their fear of a single planet populated by creatures they were beginning to understand they couldn't control. Representatives from across the galaxy exchanged nervous glances. The crystalline hegemony, masters of energy manipulation, voidwalkers who could phase through matter itself. The hive mind collective with their perfect coordination and shared consciousness, all of them afraid of a species that still used chemical rockets and fought with metal projectiles. What do we do? Asked a representative from the crystalline hegemony, their voice carrying the desperate hope that someone, anyone, had a solution to this nightmare. Veltar's response chilled. Them all to their various cores, we decide whether to contain them now, or face them when they've learned to hunt among the stars. The implications hit the chamber like a physical wave. The humans were already dangerous beyond measure while confined to their single world. What would happen when they developed faster than light travel? When they gained access to the galaxy's resources? When they turned their predatory instincts loose on civilizations that had forgotten how to fight? The Council was facing a choice that would determine the fate of every species in the galaxy. They could act now, while the humans were still planet-bound, still limited by their primitive technology. Or they could wait and hope that somehow, some way, this species of perfect predators would choose peace over conquest. But deep down, every member of the Council knew the truth. Species that had spent their entire evolutionary history perfecting warfare wouldn't suddenly choose peace. When presented with a galaxy full of potential prey, the humans had turned their entire civilization into a weapon. And now that weapon was pointed at the stars. Just like compound interest grows exponentially over time, humanity's predatory instincts had been quietly compounding for millennia, creating something the universe had never seen before: species that could hunt on a galactic scale. The question wasn't whether humanity would expand beyond their world. The question was whether any other species would survive their expansion. The emergency broadcast system activated at exactly 3:47 p.m. Eastern Time, cutting through every television program, radio show, and internet stream on Earth. 7 billion people stopped what they were doing as President David Thompson's face appeared on every screen simultaneously. His usually composed demeanor carried the weight of a revelation that would change humanity forever. "My fellow humans," President Thompson began, his voice steady, despite the magnitude of what he was about to reveal. "We are not alone in the universe, and we are not welcome." The words hit like a nuclear blast across global consciousness. In living rooms, offices, schools, and military installations around the world, people froze in stunned silence. But what happened next would prove to the watching alien fleet that they had vastly underestimated what they were dealing with. General Patricia Williams stood in the Pentagon's war room, surrounded by screens showing military networks across the globe lighting up like Christmas trees. Within minutes of the broadcast, something unprecedented began happening. Every major power on Earth nations that had been enemies for centuries began coordinating their response. Ancient enemies became instant allies, united by a threat that transcended all earthly conflicts. "The alien coalition has 47 ships," Patricia announced to the assembled military leaders via secure video conference. Representatives from Russia, China, NATO, India, and every other major power stared back at her from their own command centers. "They're debating whether to contain us permanently or eliminate us entirely." Admiral James Porter, of the Pacific Fleet, leaned forward, his weathered face grim with the kind of determination that had carried him through 3 decades of naval warfare. "What are our options, General?" Patricia's smile was colder than Arctic ice. "We show them exactly why they're afraid of us. We've spent our entire history learning to fight. Time to put that education to use." But here's where the story gets really interesting. The response wasn't just swift, it was terrifyingly coordinated. Military installations across the globe began broadcasting the same message to the alien fleet: humanity would not submit to judgment. Launch facilities from Cape Canaveral to Baikonur prepared every available rocket. Nuclear submarines surfaced from the depths of every ocean to coordinate with orbital platforms. The International Space Station, which had been a symbol of peaceful cooperation, transformed into a forward command post bristling with improvised weapons. But it was the civilian response that truly demonstrated what the aliens feared most. Within hours, every major university had teams of scientists, reverse engineering alien technology from the probe fragments that had been secretly collected months earlier. MIT, Stanford, Oxford, Tokyo University, brilliant minds that had spent their careers on theoretical physics, were suddenly working around the clock to turn alien science into human weapons. Every tech company had programmers developing cyber warfare, protocols designed to infiltrate alien computer systems. Silicon Valley giants, Chinese tech corporations, European software houses working together to create digital viruses that could cripple an alien fleet. Every manufacturer had retooled their production lines for military applications. Car Factories began producing armored vehicles. Electronics plants started churning out military-grade communication equipment. Even toy companies were designing drone swarms that could be controlled by children's gaming systems. They wanted to see what we're capable of, said Dr. Robert Chen, the physicist leading the alien technology analysis team at MIT. His eyes burned with the kind of intensity that comes from knowing. You're fighting for your species' survival. They're about to find out. Think about this for a moment. In less than 24 hours, humanity had transformed from a fractured collection of competing nations into a unified war machine. 7 billion people, all working toward a single goal. Survival. Colonel Lisa Martinez monitored the global coordination networks from her post at Nord, watching as humanity's greatest weakness became its greatest strength. We're not just fighting as individual nations anymore, she observed, her voice filled with something that might have been pride. We're fighting as a species. The transformation was unlike anything in human history. Ancient territorial disputes were set aside. Trade wars became resource-sharing agreements. Military secrets were shared freely between nations that had been spying on each other for decades. The aliens had expected to find a young, naive civilization ready to be managed, like children. Instead, it awakened something that had been dormant for millennia: humanity's collective survival instinct. And that instinct was absolutely terrifying. Every human institution, from the United Nations to local police departments, was suddenly operating with military precision. Schools became recruitment centers. Hospitals prepared for battlefield medicine. Sports stadiums transformed into coordination hubs, where former enemies planned joint operations. The aliens had made a critical error in their assessment. They'd assumed that humanity's tendency toward conflict was a weakness, evidence of a primitive species that couldn't control its aggressive impulses. What they'd actually discovered was a species that had spent millennia perfecting warfare, and was now ready to apply those skills on a galactic scale. Send them a message, Patricia ordered, her voice carrying the cold certainty of someone who'd spent their entire career preparing for this moment. Tell them we received their assessment. Tell them we disagree with their conclusions. Tell them that if they want to test humanity's capabilities, they're welcome to try. The message that went out to the alien fleet was simple, direct, and absolutely chilling in its implications. We know you're watching. We know you're judging. We know you're afraid. You should be. But the real message wasn't in the words. It was in what happened next. Every military installation on Earth began broadcasting targeting data to the alien fleet. Not threats, not demands for negotiation, but actual targeting information showing that humanity had already calculated firing solutions for every alien ship. The aliens had come to assess whether humanity was a threat. Instead, they discovered that humanity was the threat species that could go from peaceful coexistence to total war in less than a day, and do it with the kind of coordination that most species took decades to achieve, just like compound. Interest grows exponentially over time. Humanity's capacity for warfare had been quietly compounding for millennia, creating something the universe had never seen before: species that could unite instantly in the face of external threat and turn every aspect of their civilization into a weapon. The question wasn't whether humanity would fight back. The question was whether the alien fleet would survive the encounter with the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The first shot came from the Zephyrian flagship at exactly 11:47 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, a lance of pure energy that should have crippled Earth's primary defense satellite and announced humanity's doom to the universe. Instead, it struck a cloud of metallic chaff that human engineers had deployed hours earlier, dissipating harmlessly into space like fireworks on the 4th of July. That single moment changed everything. Admiral James Porter smiled grimly as he watched the alien fleet react to humanity's defensive capabilities from his command center aboard the USS Leviathan. 47 alien ships, each one a technological marvel that represented millions of years of advanced civilization, had just been outsmarted by a species they considered primitive. They expected us to cower, Porter said, his weathered face reflecting the glow of tactical displays. Instead, we've been preparing for this fight our entire history. But here's what the aliens didn't understand about humanity. When you back a predator into a corner, it doesn't surrender. It gets creative. The human response was immediate and absolutely overwhelming. Nuclear-tipped missiles launched from submarines positioned around the globe, or contrails painting deadly arcs across the sky. Railgun projectiles fired from hidden lunar installations that the aliens had never detected, traveling at velocities that made their advanced shields useless. Cyber warfare programs, developed by teenagers in their bedrooms and refined by military hackers, infiltrated alien communication networks with devastating efficiency. Within minutes, the alien fleet was blind, deaf, and facing an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. "My God," whispered Captain Jake Morrison from the Deep Space Monitoring Station, his voice filled with the kind of awe that comes from witnessing the impossible. "We're actually winning. Think about that for a moment. A species that had barely escaped their own planet was defeating a coalition of 47 advanced civilizations. How is that even possible?" The answer lies in something the aliens had completely misunderstood about human nature. They had superior technology, weapons, that could reshape matter at the molecular level, defensive systems that could withstand the heat of a star. But they'd made a critical error in their calculations. They'd assumed humans would fight like a civilized species with restraint, honor, and predictable tactics. Instead, humanity fought like what they'd always been, apex predators with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The aliens fought to contain a threat. Humans fought to survive as a species. General Patricia Williams coordinated the global response from the Pentagon, watching as human forces adapted to alien tactics in real time. Every military installation on Earth was connected through quantum-encrypted networks, sharing intelligence and coordinating attacks with the precision of a surgical strike and the fury of a hurricane. "They're retreating," she announced, disbelief coloring her voice as she watched the tactical display. "The entire fleet is pulling back to minimum safe distance." The holographic display showed the alien formation breaking apart like a shattered mirror. Individual ships scrambling to avoid the coordinated human assault. What had begun as a containment operation designed to judge humanity's worthiness had become a complete rout. But the humans weren't finished. They'd learned something crucial about their enemies in those first few minutes of combat. The aliens were used to fighting other civilized species. They expected rules, protocols, predictable responses. Humanity threw out every rule and fought, with the kind of creative brutality that had carried them from the caves to the stars. Civilian satellites were turned into kinetic weapons. Commercial shipping containers launched from orbital platforms became projectile swarms. Even the International Space Station had been converted into a command center that was coordinating attacks across the entire solar system. "Incoming transmission?" From the alien fleet, reported Major Tom Bradley, his voice tight with exhaustion and exhilaration. The stress of the past few hours had aged him years, but his eyes burned with the fierce pride of someone who'd just witnessed their species' greatest triumph. The message was brief and chilling. "We withdraw. We will not underestimate your species. Again, but know this: the galaxy is watching, and the galaxy is afraid." President Thompson's response was broadcast simultaneously to Earth and to the retreating alien fleet, his words carrying the weight of a species that had just announced itself to the universe. "Good. Fear keeps you cautious. Caution keeps you alive. Remember this moment, and remember why humanity earned the right to reach for the stars." As the alien ships disappeared into the void, leaving Earth's defenders victorious but forever changed, Patricia Williams allowed herself a moment of reflection. The aliens had been right about one thing: humanity was an apex predator species, but they'd been wrong about what that meant. "We didn't become dangerous because we're evil," she said to her assembled staff, her voice carrying the wisdom of someone who just witnessed the birth of a new age. "We became dangerous because we refused to be prey." The galaxy had tested humanity and found them wanting to be left alone, wanting to be respected, wanting to be feared. They'd gotten all three, but more importantly, they'd proven something that would echo across the universe for millennia to come. Humanity had passed its first test as a spacefaring species. They'd proven they could defend themselves against superior technology and overwhelming odds. But most importantly, they'd proven they could do it together. 7 billion people, united by a threat that transcended all earthly conflicts, had become something the universe had never seen before. Collective predator species with the technological capability to back up their instincts. The age of human expansion into the galaxy was about to begin, and the universe would never be the same as the last alien ship disappeared beyond the edge of the solar system. Humanity stood at the threshold of a new chapter in their story. They'd spent millennia learning to fight, to adapt, to survive. Now they were ready to take those lessons to the stars. The aliens had given them a gift without. Realizing it, they'd shown humanity that they weren't alone in the universe. And they'd learned that in a galaxy full of civilized species. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who refuses to be civilized. Just like compound. Interest grows exponentially over time. Humanity's capacity for warfare and innovation had been quietly building for millennia, creating something that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The question wasn't whether humanity would expand beyond Earth. The question was whether any other species would be ready. For what was coming,